Good morning, everyone. My name is Jorge Alvar. I'm the Director of Infrastructure, Healthcare, and work for the ICTs at ICEX. So as you can see, I'm a virtual speaker, and I would just like to apologize for not being able to be there physically this year and be able to see you face to face and enjoy with all of you. But regardless, I would like to congratulate Inthibe for all their endeavor and their effort in creating such a successful conference. So what I would like to do here today is just to give you two messages. One is, why is internationalization so important? And two, what are we doing in this field to ICEX with Inthibe? So I'm going to try to not use up all my time because I want to leave up some free time for any potential questions. So internationalization is kind of an ugly word to define everything that revolves around the process of commerce, international commerce, but also around the interactions between and the migrations of workers, because this is very important in the field of digitalization. You know, it's constantly talked about. And they were actually very critical about the measures of Trump, because in Silicon Valley, part of the success in Silicon Valley was due to the digitalization. And there's many foreigners that are actually at the head of many of the most successful companies. So we have certain exceptions in the part of investment and commerce. So the first question is, why is internationalization so important? It's a need for both the companies as well as for the companies. So for countries, since internationalization is one of the most important vectors of increase, and the average size of the companies in Spain is one of the biggest problems that our economy has. So that is why internationalization is so important. So fortunately, we're going to see how in the following months, as a result of the pandemic, the fact that Spain is based more on a different structure of smaller companies, of less than 100 companies, we're going to see a vast change, and it's going to have a huge impact on our economy. So that's why we have to grow. We need to have startups, and it's really good news to have those startups to turn into SMEs, and if those SMEs turn into medium enterprises, and from medium to large enterprises. Because we know that large companies pay more, they're more productive, they invest more in investment and research, and they are more resilient to crises compared to smaller enterprises. So it is also necessary because it is a means of growth, and growth is always key to becoming larger, and that's obviously positive. So one of the issues with internationalization, since it's such a complex issue, there's two reasons why it's complex. It requires a complex decision from a strategic decision from the managing directors in the company, because you require communication with the human resources, the financing, requires a lot of time and effort, and of course that incurs in risk, in costs. There are many companies that actually start on a journey of internationalization without having any strategy behind it. So sometimes that can turn out well, but many times it doesn't end up going too well, or at least they don't reap all the benefits in the short run. And also, the process of internalization is more complicated because we live in a very complex world, and of course it's becoming more and more complex. But the truth is, there are micro trends, micro tendencies that influence our day-to-day lives that are out of our hands. Perhaps they're not as much related to kind of climate change, to the aging population in Europe, Japan, potentially China, but those are one of the biggest trends that we're seeing in the world. And of course, the rupture of the digitalization process and digital transformation. Now, those are completely enrooted in cybersecurity. So the culture of digitalization is something that is most likely going to become accelerated in the following 2 years, and that's something that we've recently seen. And the main reason for that is China. So throughout all of history, China's been the most important country in the world. However, in the last 500 years, it's dropped to the background on the secondary importance. So we want to see this different. So if we would follow an Asian model of industrialization through internationalization, we have not been able to adapt or to embrace those changes appropriately, and now the result of this is that we've seen populist parties emerge with right wing and left wing. So suddenly we don't have like such open societies anymore. But the countries want to close up. For example, with Donald Trump, make America great again. Who's seen different echoes in different countries as well, and then of course the fight between the hegemonies in the United States. Of course, we've seen a lot of losing parties because the transition has been so fast. There have been a lot of barriers to investment. We've seen new theories of industrial politics, and we're moving towards a world that perhaps is not so open as the one we've seen in the last 20, 30 years. Because if it's completely open, then it's going to be in determined areas and in specific areas. So it will be kind of a regional bubble since it becomes so fashionable now. So with regard to the change of hegemony, the Chinese trend and ruptures, that didn't begin with cybersecurity. But the best example of it, the best company, even though TikTok is so famous now, is Huawei. So at the end of the day, these micro trends, they do have specific effects on companies. And especially they have an effect on cybersecurity, because also related to trends also have a big effect. And then also digital transformation is also very important in this sense. In the previous speech, we heard a little bit about this. And also about the appearance of new regulatory frameworks that did not exist 5 years ago at all. And this could be also a relationship with the new and the new approaches that we have to the industrial structures. And we've also found ourselves with a new element, which is this pandemic, which has sharpened or exacerbated some of these trends. So the pandemic is going to create a devastating economic blow, and the acceleration of the digital revolution, and amongst others, such as, for example, the changes to the fiscal and monetary policies. The interests are going to be very low or even negative for a long time until the debt in Europe has been neutralized. So the effect of all of this, as I was saying, is the huge companies are seeing themselves with a huge impact. So is the cybersecurity sector going to grow, or is it going to shrink because of the economic crisis? So are we going to get out of this or not? Are the authorities going to provide us with investors from outside, from other countries? Now, those are questions that all of these companies are asking themselves. Then we also have the phenomenon of internationalization, which is necessary but also complex. So, as I was saying, we as Spanish people have to be optimistic with our possibilities. It's not always been like this. But the Spanish economy has proven that it's able to create very competitive countries that can export to other countries and be very successful. We are the largest, we are the most open economy after Germany. We're more open than the French, more open than the Italians. We're even more, we have a more open economy than the British. So I think that's something very important to point out. So Spain is capable of reinventing itself and getting out of its own country and contacting with the outside. But perhaps our starting point was not as possible as in other sectors, such as styles, infrastructure, water, transport industry. At the end of the day, the ecosystems are still immature, and we don't have huge multinationals uh, that can help other sectors. So we're seeing other companies appearing, um, but they still have a long way to go. But by creating this potential new sector, there are a few interesting elements, and one of this of the private-public investment, and that's why we fit in the picture at ICEX. Of course, we don't fit in every sense of digitalization. So yesterday we talked about Europe Digital or Horizon Europe. So we're not there at the part of internationalization, but rather commercialization or marketing. And yes, and before we were talking about the and how we can affect on this. So we want to help in the little details. So what can we do exactly? Do we go to France? Do we go to Chile? Who do we target? Who do we sell our products to? So, and does this mean that they're going to respond immediately? What lawyers? What legal help should I inquire? Do you have any contacts? So there's a lot of questions that need to be asked. At the end, our work at ICEX related to alliances. So before our alliance was the National Institute of Cybersecurity. And we do this through the national network of offices in Spain and the outside. So we have a network of over 100 offices in the world. In around 200 countries. So it's impossible. It's almost impossible to find a country where the cybersecurity company where we don't have an office. So we're active in Africa, Central Africa, where we're not in Micronesia, but at the end of the day, the key of cybersecurity is in a few markets, and something that we've done over the past years. We started working cybersecurity around 4 or 5 years ago. Is raising awareness of all the companies because since they interact with all the sectors. So how could we make them understand the language of cybersecurity, how the markets function, how can we get them to identify contacts, etc. That's why the contact with INCIBE has been key. And this year, what we've done is we've raised awareness for 20 continents. 20 offices. So in America, we have offices working on this, United States, in Canada, Brazil, Mexico, Chile, Colombia, Europe, the UK, Holland, Belgium, Sweden, Portugal, and in Asia we have Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, and India. And finally, also Australia. So, of course, there's some other missions such as China, but the ones we've targeted, the figures that the countries that we're going to be focusing on more are the ones that are going to be investing more on cybersecurity over the following years. But those are also the countries where we believe that the largest amount of companies are going to be focusing on cybersecurity. So what do we do regarding to cybersecurity, and why is it so important to collaborate with these offices to help them become more familiar with the sector of cybersecurity? Well, first of all, the International Business Forum that's being held at ICEX since 4 years. Every year we bring international buyers, and I think this year is going to be a huge success. So last year it was already considered the most valued activity at ICEX. And this year, since we're doubling all of our efforts, we've brought in even more people. And people from very important entities, private and public, from different entities, for example, the Central Bank of Mexico, amongst others. So that's all very fascinating. So there's going to be 30. So up until now, we were around 9, 8, or 10, 12, depending on what year. And I think this is a significant increase, and I'm pretty sure that we're going to be able to keep this up for next year. And also, besides all of these missions, all these activities, we also organize conferences or days in different countries. So these conferences obviously have been canceled as a result of the pandemic, but we are going to recover them and organize them again as soon as we can. So they have been. So perhaps we're going to have to start using virtual conferences from now on by emphasizing on in some Latin American, South American countries, and maybe potentially some European ones. So those offices are focusing a lot on the consultancies that we provide. We offer consultant advisory services to some of these companies. So what they ask of us is studies of the markets, and what they ask us to help them find associates, financial associates, or investors. So it's very important to be bi-directional. So if we don't have the companies going out and seeking on their effort and their endeavor of internationalization, then everything will be in vain. Because what these offices depend on are on contacts, and we need to keep those contacts alive with interesting proposals. So with this change of ecosystem, which is going to allow us to have a more potential exporting and be more internationally competitive, it's going to allow us to have these companies do more on their behalf. And as I'm saying, everything is getting better. We're creating a better network of people that are working outside of Spain. They were creating infrastructures of investors that's going to help us get into the field of cybersecurity. And we're also learning a lot about the supply and demand of cybersecurity. So one of the keys is the participation in RSA. So that's something we've seen a lot more support over the last year. So we'd like to give that even a larger turn. So our idea is to concentrate the Spanish offer centered around these axes. So you mentioned one of them yesterday, and then we have the parallel actions of networking, of socialization, which are also key. Of course, everything related to what's going on this year. But we know for sure that either this year or next year, we're going to be evolving and working on a new model. It's going to help us focus more on ourselves, but not just Spanish and South American, but also connecting with other countries, which is, of course, what we do. So what else do we do with regard to cybersecurity? So it's a strategic decision. So we also work with strategies. We have a strategic advisory program called ICEX Next, with companies that are just launching their internationalization program. And we also have a program called Desafía that has a double goal. It allows companies to land and get used to in the new landscapes. It is led by entrepreneurs that are leaders in the whole world. We have San Francisco and Tel Aviv right now. And on the other side, we have the transformation of entrepreneurship. So what the Spanish companies offer, the internationalization that they offer, is not necessarily worse than other countries, but the commercial capacities and managing capacities in the world of entrepreneurship are not comparable. They are worse than Spain. So one of the other goal of this program is giving you an idea of what you have to change as a company and as an entrepreneur in order to make the most of the situation. So we are doing very well, and we've managed to have companies that have left Security Venture, that have entered Desafía, to continue with their internationalization process. Also, I was saying before that internationalization is related to human resources. So we have probably the most famous intern system in all of Spain. And it's a 3-year program. So what we do is we take recently graduated students who speak 3 languages, have an MBA in commercial business. For 1 year, it's full-time. Then the second year, they come to work with us at an office, and they do everything that internalization entails. So they organize events, market studies, analysis. They create networks. They create draft agendas. And then the third year, they joined a company. So we pay for half of their salary, and the company pays for the other half. So then for the company, they only have to pay for 12,000 euros for the employee. So, and we also have the lever of the external investment. So in Spain, we have a problem with this because we have a lot more investment from external companies that and then national companies. And I think that's something important to point out. And once the investments have been made, so we help to solve certain some of the paperwork in order to obtain employees or the taxes for investors, etc. So we're not there to, we're just there to solve market errors or market mistakes, and that way we work in this sense. And we must be doing something right. Laura Rebollo mentioned yesterday that 83% of cybersecurity ventures, of the companies, found our common programs very interesting. And as I was saying, the International Business Forum has been a total success, or it's been a total success over the past years, and I hope it's going to be the same this year. But I insist, if we want to keep working in this world that's just starting out now, and it has to compete with other very big sectors, we need companies to be involved. And with that, I would like to just to wrap up my speech. So we need to go out there to grow. Growth is necessary. Our slogan used to be, "Our world is our market." And at the end, we need to have strategies. The companies need to have strategies for this very complicated world that we live in. And even though this decision is not easy to take, we're going to be there to help those companies. So that's very important, and we're similar to Incibe. So we are a public organism that works for the companies. We don't supervise, we don't regulate, we don't sanction. All we do is provide our help. So that's why I know that all of you that know us, or Javier, they know that we're there when they need help. And that's about it. Thank you so much. And if you have any question, I will be more than happy to take them. Yes, Jorge, I think we have around 7 minutes left, and I think we have a few questions. So somebody was asking about the internship program that you have at ICEX of internationalization, and whether there are any specific open lines, any open positions in cybersecurity. So there are no specific fields of that program. So we do try to make sure that these different candidates enter the sectors that we most need help with. But the decision is at the hands of the interns. But since it's such a prestigious program, there's so much more demand of companies than of interns. Basically, every intern has around 6 job offers. So what the companies have to do is they really have to elaborate and focus on giving a good job proposal. And there's no reason to get scared. The large companies and their companies perhaps apply for this program, but there are many interns that would prefer to pick one over the other. So we have another question. Congratulations on your collaboration with Incibe for achieving your results in these key sectors. So what opportunities do you see in the short run? So what do you mean exactly with opportunities here? I'm not sure. I believe that what opportunities do you see in this collaboration with Incibe? So what opportunities do I see with the collaboration with Incibe? So we think it's going to get even better. There's going to be more collaboration. Because on one hand, we've institutionalized our collaboration, so we have an agreement. And also because we know each other, and that's also very key, because the work of administrations is also about the fact of people getting along, about us having the same interests. And that's what happens with Incibe. So we have a lot of different activities in mind, and as soon as this COVID situation has been calmed down a little bit, we're going to see how we can put them forward. But I think that's something that we've seen over the past year and a half. We've seen a lot of new situations, and I think we're going to keep working in that line. And I think we're always going to do that hand in hand with Incibe. integrating more and more programs. I was talking about cybersecurity ventures before, so that's one of the ideas. So what are the emerging referent companies that we are seeing right now? So ones that you've accelerated in cybersecurity, I will be responsible for the commercialization. So we got one more question. So cybersecurity can be the engine that the Spanish technological industry needs. So why is there so much potential in this industry? I think this is something that we've already talked about today and yesterday. Well, I don't want to be negative, but every sector thinks that they're the biggest sector. But there's something sure about the one of technology, and that's that it's growing very fast, and the advance of the digitalization is going to raise awareness and to people be more aware of the importance of technology. So what we're saying about people working in technologies being weird people, that's not necessarily true. But I don't know if we can really consider that it's absolutely the most important sector. I think it still has a long way to go. So every sector has got their own trajectory. We were talking about the creation of the ecosystem before. So the cybersecurity still has a long way to go in order to reach in order to have a huge role in Spain, at least in regard to exports. And this is a personal question of mine. So we talked about this yesterday. So in some of the countries surrounding us, we have seen a sharper increase in the industry of cybersecurity. So are we at a disadvantage over other countries? Every time I hear one of those questions, there's different answers. Are we late? And that's a general worry. That's a general frustration in Spain. So, oh no, we just missed a train to. Well, in economy, trains are very complicated. They run along multiple tracks, and you can never be too sure how they work. And when we have technological advances, we can suddenly advance greatly. For example, batteries. Well, we are not a country that's going to be building batteries. But what about hydrogen? Perhaps we can be leaders there. I don't really mind about us not being the first or of us being at a disadvantage compared to other countries. But I think it's more important to set the foundations to have our industry flourish in the future, something that will allow us to accelerate more in the future. It's not about what's happening right now, but it's about what's happening below us in the background, something that's going to allow us to grow more in the future. And I think that we are progressing well in that regard. And then we have a last question. So which countries are demanding for more solutions of Spanish cybersecurity? We don't know. I know that's not the answer you were hoping for, but generally speaking, we don't have trustworthy data regarding the provision of services. So a service does not stop at the toll at the borders of a country, and we know who brings it and who exports it, who imports it, etc. And even if you could analyze a transaction from another source, those sources does not overpass a certain threshold. And then what happens is that you could be exporting cybersecurity solutions that are not duly registered. So that's why we don't know. We don't know exactly. Which we would know exactly what happens with how many shoes we export. So what I would say right now is an answer that we can all imagine. So Western countries, UK, Germany, Italy, and France, and the United States, are probably. So then we would also take the leading markets in South America, Mexico, and Brazil, amongst others. But I really don't have specific data to say that the country that is leading in exports is this country, and it's unfortunately not possible.